Hello, my name is Raquel Figueira, and I'm going to present the research that our team has been conducting on the Limnoperna fortunei infestation of hydroelectric power plants in Brazil, with a focus on assessment methods. So let me start out by introducing the species that we're working with, the Limnoperna fortunei. It is known as the golden mussel, and this is an invasive species. It is estimated that the golden mussel came to South America from Asia in the 90s. It was originally from China, and it must have arrived here with ballast water in Argentina. Since then, it has been spreading through our freshwater systems, and now it is found in most regions of Brazil except for the north region, though there is some concern for the Amazon lately. Most of the inland dispersal of the golden mussel is aided by boat traffic. The adult of this animal lives attached to substrates by the byssus, but the planktonic larvae also contribute to the dispersal downstream. So of course, invasive species are very damaging to the environment. Without natural competition or predators, they reproduce without restriction. The golden mussel in particular is a very efficient filter feeder. They cause clarification of the water and reduce the amount of nutrients available to the native species. Some species of fish can feed on mussel, but not all of them are able to digest the shell of the golden mussel, and they can die, as you can see here on the picture in the middle. The golden mussel has a preference to live attached to solid structures, but they can be found on mud and sand as well, even in great quantities. In this case, the animal creates an anchor using the byssus and whatever particles it can gather from the substrate. So there is very little restriction to the colonization capacity of this animal. The golden mussel is a gregarious species. It forms these big masses, and they can destroy natural areas, boats, fishing nets, docks, etc. They can clog pipes, sink structures. On the left here is a picture of the opening gate of a hydroelectric power plant entirely occupied by the mussel. At this point, these animals are found in reservoirs encompassing about a third of the Brazilian energy matrix. And it's estimated that they cost the energy sector about $120 million per year in damages. They have become a very serious environmental and economical problem that needs to be dealt with. So this is where our own work comes in. Our area of study is in the central part of Brazil between the states of São Paulo and Mato Grosso do Sul, where Rio Tietê, this is Rio Tietê, meets with the Rio Paraná. And there are three important hydroelectric power plants in this region, over here, here, and here. This is called the Urubupunga complex, and these plants have interconnected water systems. And since there is all this connectivity and also a lot of boat traffic in this region, the entire area is very heavily infested with the golden mussel. So our main objective with this work was to assess the level of infestation in this area, but also to analyze the method itself and hopefully develop a more streamlined procedure so that the local companies and communities will be able to keep track of the situation and make better decisions. Our own procedure then included a traditional approach to field work with Benthic communities. We sampled each selected site using transects and quadrats, and we also made note of data such as temperature, oxygen level, salinity, etc. The quadrats were photographed to be later processed on the computer. The samples were weighted and counted in the field to serve as our baseline results. The images that we acquired were then processed in the computer using two different approaches. First, we used the program CPCE to measure dominance and abundance of the mussel in the community, which is a semi-manual approach. The program does a lot of the math work, but we still need to indicate the mussels manually for the program. In our second approach, we have been working on an automated method using Python to process the images and recognize the mussels and count them for us with little to no input. And the idea here is to make things faster and easier and perhaps even more accessible, since this method in theory could be used by someone who is not trained to identify mussels, a non-specialist. The results that we are producing are being analyzed statistically, and in the end I'm going to show a comparison of the results that we have so far so you can see the level of accuracy of the AI in identifying and counting the mussel. So let me start out by showing what we were able to observe from the field activities. You can see here in the pictures that the area where we worked has a lot of built structures, and that creates an ideal environment for the growth of the golden mussel. This picture right here on the middle shows an artificial channel that connects two of the rivers of the region. This channel is made of concrete, and at this point the surface of the channel is pretty much entirely covered by mussels. And on the right we show some detailed pictures of one of the hydroelectric power plants of the area, and it is also entirely covered by mussels. Now, this is very much to be expected considering the preferred substrate of the mussel and the fact that the environment in these particular places are severely impacted by human activity. But what is probably most concerning is when we look at the more preserved areas, the areas with natural substrates, which in this case would be mud and sand with some scattered rocky points. In these collection points, the mussel doesn't quite reach the same astronomical populations as the constructed areas, but because these areas are just not as homogeneous. But they are still very abundant and they can reach extremely high densities. And this shows very clearly how much of a problem the golden mussel is to our natural habitats and to the local native species. Now I'm going to show some of our numerical results, and here on the left you can observe some of the distinctions that I made. The more impacted areas are mostly concrete structures, and the more natural areas have sand and rocky bits. And among these collection points, we selected the 4 that I put here on the right. And these 4, they are good examples of the varied local conditions on our area of study. And we can analyze the benthic communities in these 4 points. The first one, Rio Sucuriú, is the most well preserved of these 4, and we can see the highest diversity of species in this location with a relatively low coverage of the mussel. The mussel is not completely dominating this community. The next 2 ones, the Tietê Paraná and the Três Irmãos points, are areas of a lot of constructed structures and impact of human activity. The Tietê Paraná point is close to a fish farm, and the Três Irmãos is right beside one of the power plants. In both of these points, the mussels completely take over the benthos. They pretty much remove anything else. And the last point over there is, we called it residential. It is an in-between area in the sense that it is not constructed. There is not a lot of concrete in the area, but it is under a lot of impact from human activity. Now this point has some diversity in the benthos, and the mussel is not really completely dominating the area, but as we're going to see, that's not as great as we might think. When we take a closer look at this diversity, we see that the species that are occupying this space are all invasive. None of the most common species on the benthic communities are native. This is an alarming result because we are seeing that these invasive species are taking over the spaces. They are dislocating the natives, and they are effectively altering the biota in every level. We can note here too that the natural conditions in this area of Brazil, they are actually very welcoming to the golden mussel infestation. The water temperature in the region is relatively high with little variation throughout the year, and this variation does not affect the mussel at all. The water flow keeps it very well oxygenated. There's nearly permanent abundance of food. So basically, the mussel settled in a place where there are no abiotic factors that would in any way be a deterrent to it, unless you consider human interference. And this is what we see here on the graphic on the right, that none of the abiotic variables explains the mussel abundance. There is a weak correlation with species abundance, but that's it. Now, as I mentioned before, one of our goals was to develop tools that could simplify the work that we did to assess the mussel population. So we have been working on an artificial intelligence script to identify mussels in an image and count them automatically for us. We are using region-based convolution neural network. In this approach, the program basically selects regions on each image that we provide for it and processes these regions to identify the target. It goes through cycles of convolutions, which are filters to produce these feature maps. The process of preparation of this AI includes 3 phases. The first one is the training phase. On the training phase, as an input, we give the program the correct answers, the ones that we got from our manual counting, and the program will then update the weight of the filters based on the answers to get to the answers. Basically, it works backwards from the answers. After the training phase, we have a validation phase in which we also give the results, but the AI uses it to double check its own answers. And finally, we get to the testing phase. And on the testing phase, we do not give the results, we just give the images to the AI and receive the answers. And in this case, I suppose we are the ones who will be checking the results. So in order to increase the data set that was used for the training, we used some augmentation. In this method, we select an area of the image with a recognizable feature. In this case of the golden mussel, the program uses mostly the opening of the shell as the identifying feature. So we select an area of the image with this feature, and we generate new images with that feature shifted, rotated, sometimes cropped, sometimes darker or lighter. And the idea here is to create a more varied condition of that same feature so that the AI will be able to recognize it in natural conditions. As I said in the beginning, this is still a work in progress. We are developing this AI, and we still intend to make some more field expeditions and get new images of new locations. But the accuracy of the results that we have so far has been quite impressive. On the graphics here, we show the difference, the subtraction of the manual count by the AI count. On the left, we have the estimates of abundance per square meter, and on the right, the estimate of weight per square meter. But the results are practically the same. And what we are seeing is an error rate that is close to 50% at most. And when we consider that we are dealing with populations of thousands of animals per square meter, a difference of around 100 animals is almost insignificant. We're still working on this, and we do intend to improve these values so that we can remain below 10% error rates. But what we have already is very promising, and we're very excited for the future of this method. This research is part of a larger project on the golden mussel that is being developed in Brazil with the support of CTG Brasil, Speak Brasil, Tijuá Energia, and ANEEL. I thank you all very much for the attention, and I leave my contact on the screen.